went down to Houston for the Inertia RC grand opening and it was absolutely awesome. I was planning on doing more of a vlog style video like I did at Spare Time, but I ended up getting caught up in the racing, so I'm back here in the studio to tell you guys about it. I'm going to kind of go over the shop and the setup and all the activities they had to do and give you my thoughts, and then also talk about the racing and why it was so cool to be able to go and race with like a different crowd and try some new things. So starting out, obviously this is a Mini Z racing channel, so we'll talk about the Mini Z track. The Mini Z track was just a hair longer than the one I normally race on at Area RC, but it was a lot more of like a flowing layout, and to me it felt a little bit more like a normal racetrack than an RC track with the way the layout flows. Obviously that's temporary, but it was fun to race on kind of a different style of layout. Obviously there's only so many things you can do depending on which RCP kits you have. I thought they did a really great job with theirs. It was a lot of fun. They also had an off-road RCP track for micro buggies. I tried out the Losi Micro B. That was the first time I've ever driven it, and honestly it was a ton of fun. It was kind of like the Mini Z in the way that it drives like a proper RC car and not like a toy, even though the size kind of makes it look like one. But I had a ton of fun driving on the track. They basically just used like PVC pipes and other sections of track under the track to create little jumps. But I actually had an interesting thought driving these. It felt easier than driving a Mini Z at first, because when I first drove Mini Zs, I was driving the C8 Corvette body and the splitter kept sticking to the wall and spinning me out. Whereas with these buggies, a lot of times if you just barely clip the wall, the wheels will ride over the walls on the RCP track. So even though you kind of made a mistake, it didn't like disrupt your whole lap quite as much as it does with the Mini Z. Now, one thing that was funny was that they could actually just fly right off the track because the wheels are just so tall compared to a Mini Z. So the track isn't really like, it's almost more of like an obstacle than a wall. And I was curious to see how a beginner would fare with the micro buggy versus a regular like on-road style Mini Z. Talked to the Losi guys and they were telling me that people even run the Micro B on like 10th scale tracks, which seemed crazy to me, but it was way too fast to really be able to use the full potential of it on the small RCP track they did have. And the next thing that was super cool to see was the drift track, because I've never actually seen high-end RC drifting up close. Like I've seen, you know, somebody with the drift car at a car meet or something like that, but I've never seen like a bunch of proper drift cars with good drivers on a cool track like that. So that was fun to watch and cool to see up close in person. And then the final like activity, I guess you could say, was the crawling park. I thought they did a really good job with the crawling course. They had a good variety of like some kind of natural stuff that used rocks, and then the mountain blocks, and then the wooden crawler park features. I don't know if this was intentional, but one thing that I noticed that seemed kind of cool about their layout, the easier stuff and the harder stuff were kind of like in different parts of the layout. So it kind of meant that like the kids who were kind of more like bashing around and being kids were on one end, and then the adults who had, you know, nice rigs and they're trying to crawl precisely and do tough lines were on the other side of the course. So it kind of created like a natural flow where, at least from my perspective, it didn't look like you had a bunch of kids bouncing all over the place, upsetting anybody that was trying to do any serious crawling. And then checking out the actual hobby shop portion, one cool thing was they have a ton of old Mini Zs, a bunch of Ferraris, and then it was cool to see their inventory. It was kind of different than I'm used to with Area RC. I felt like their inventory was a lot more geared towards the hardcore racers. Like I don't think I saw any selection of Kyosho tires. It was pretty much all PN and Marca. They actually didn't have a lot of Kyosho accessories at all. It was almost all PN. And then the MWX brand stuff, of course. They had associated RC28s and Xbilities, which was cool. It sounds like the Houston scene is a little bit more into the lipo cars and kind of some more serious racing. And speaking of racing, I did race there. I ran the box stock class. I didn't have a car set up for the other classes they ran. They were doing a 2500 kV hard body class, which I've heard is actually pretty common, but I just don't have that set up. I have a 3500 kV, and I guess I do have a hard body on my car, but anyways, I ran box stock. It was kind of nice running just one class, not really worrying too much about multiple cars and all the setups. It went pretty well. I got to meet a few of the local Houston guys, and then one thing that was cool was I got to see my buddy Jaron from our local track beating up on Brandon Rose in the lipo class. I know the mini racing isn't really Brandon Rose's thing, but you could tell in the second qualifier, once he started to get comfortable with the car, he did get pretty fast. And it was a pretty close race in the final, so that was super fun to watch. Local guys throwing down. Yeah, and then I don't know if I got any footage of it, but they had a food truck, and I had a shrimp po' boy that was absolute gas. Like, I've still been thinking about that, craving a po' boy, but there's nowhere to get one that good here in DFW. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed Inertia RC. I definitely wish that it was a little closer. It's about 3.5 hours for me. The racing was fun. The shop was awesome. And Marcus from MWX even gave me some tips for dialing in some of the MWX parts I just bought for the RC28. So I'm excited to get that up and running. I did their ball diff and their center shock. And then I've also got a Lexan body in the works for that car, so that'll be exciting. But yeah, I would definitely recommend stopping by Inertia if you're in Houston. It's in Tomball, so it's a little out of the city, which is actually kind of nice because you don't have to deal with the actual Houston traffic. It was also a little bit validating to know that I'm competitive down there too. I don't think I've raced against anybody that was in that class with me, so it's kind of fun to see that I was still competitive against a different crowd. That's something I always wonder about when I start something new, you know, it's like you race the same guys all the time and you kind of know where you are within your local club and like the local area, but sometimes you go out of town and you just get absolutely humbled. So I'm glad to say that wasn't the case. And if you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching and subscribe to the Mini Racers for all things mini racing.